We hear it all the time, right? AI is going to change everything. It's the most powerful technology of our generation. And yet, for so many businesses, that incredible promise just kind of sits on the shelf, gathering digital dust, which really makes you wonder.
I mean, this is the multi-billion-dollar question, isn't it? It's a puzzle that leaders and tech teams are wrestling with every single day. They go out, they invest in these brilliant game-changing tools, but getting their people to actually use them and change how they work, that is a completely different ballgame.
So to really get to the bottom of why we resist new tech, you can't just look at an easy, simple case. No, you have to go somewhere where the stakes are incredibly high, where every single decision is under a microscope, and where the cost of failure is just massive. You have to, really stress test the whole idea.
And that is exactly what this research did. It went to the world of B2B industrial automation marketing in Egypt. Now, I know that might sound super specific, but it's actually the perfect laboratory to study this stuff, because this environment smashes together two really powerful sources of pressure.
First, you've got the industry itself. Look, we are not talking about choosing a new photo app on your phone. This is a world of multi-million-dollar deals, incredibly complex machinery, and sales cycles that can drag on for months, sometimes even years. There is absolutely zero tolerance for guesswork. Any new tech has to somehow play nice with clunky old systems, and if it can't prove its return on investment with hard numbers, it's gone.
And then you layer on top of that the country context. So Egypt is pushing hard for this big digital transformation, but it's also dealing with some very real-world challenges. Things like tight budgets, a pretty well-known gap in specialized tech skills, and a heavy reliance on outside vendors. All of this just makes every single decision to adopt a new AI tool that much more intense.
Okay, so to figure out what's really driving decisions in this kind of high-pressure cooker, the researchers didn't just start from scratch. They used a really well-established blueprint for human behavior. Think of it like a recipe that explains how we all decide whether or not to actually use a new piece of technology. And that blueprint is called UTAUTO2. Yeah, it sounds super complicated, but the idea behind it is actually pretty simple. It's basically a framework that says our decision to use new tech isn't just random chance. Nope, it's predictable, and it's based on a handful of key things that shape what we intend to do. And what's so cool about this is how it all boils down to these 4 really basic questions that, let's be honest, we all ask ourselves. Number 1, is this thing actually going to make me better at my job? Number 2, is this a giant pain to use? 3, what do the people I respect, my boss, my colleagues, what do they think about it? And finally, number 4, do I actually have the training, the budget, and the support I need to make this work? But, okay, here is where it gets really interesting. The researchers basically said, hold on, in a super high-stakes environment like industrial marketing, those 4 ingredients, they're not enough. The recipe was missing something crucial that explains why even a perfect tool might just end up being ignored. And the first missing piece is this: your own confidence. It doesn't matter how great a tool is or how much it could help you if you don't feel like you have the skills to pull it off. That feeling, that confidence, it's the bridge. Without it, all the motivation from those other drivers just, it never makes it across to the final decision to actually do something.
And the second missing piece? It's risk. And this is just a brilliant way to think about it. Imagine risk is like a dimmer switch for your motivation. When the perceived risk is low, all those positive factors like how well the tool performs or how easy it is, they're shining brightly, and they have a huge impact on your decision. But when you crank up that perceived risk, fears about your job security, data breaches, or just looking foolish, that dimmer switch gets turned way down, and suddenly the power of all those other motivators gets a whole lot weaker.
So this was a really fascinating theory. But you gotta ask, would it actually hold up in the real world? Well, the researchers put it to the test. They surveyed 402 marketing professionals right in the thick of Egypt's industrial sector. And what they found was pretty remarkable.
So who were these people? Well, as you can see, the typical person they talked to was male, highly educated, a lot of them with a master's degree, and in their early to mid-30s. This is a generation that's right at that interesting crossroads between old-school business practices and this whole new wave of digital tech.
So what was the final verdict from the data? A perfect score, 8 out of 8. Every single one of the hypotheses the researchers put forward was confirmed.
I mean, just look at this table. The results are crystal clear.
Those 4 core drivers we talked about, performance, effort, social influence, and support, yep, they were all strong predictors. But what about those 2 new factors? Well, the data confirmed it. Confidence absolutely acts as that crucial bridge. And just like they predicted, risk works exactly like a dimmer switch, weakening everything else. In short, the entire model worked perfectly.
So if there is one huge takeaway from all of this, it's this. We tend to think of confidence as this, soft, fuzzy feeling. But what this research proves is that it's actually a hard requirement for getting technology adopted. If you don't empower your users and build up their belief in themselves, even the best AI tools on the planet will fail to make an impact.
So what does this all mean for you? For anyone out there trying to get their team to actually use a new tool? Well, the research doesn't just point out the problem. It gives us a really clear playbook for managers and leaders. It's about taking this theory and turning it into real-world action. And the whole plan really boils down to 5 key moves. First, you got to communicate the why, not the features, the actual strategic value. Then you have to make it dead simple. Simplify everything. Third, and this is the big one from the study, you have to build confidence with real training. Fourth, you can't ignore the fear. You have to address it head-on with total transparency. And finally, you find your champions, those influential people on the team who can create that positive social buzz.
And that really brings us to the final question to leave you with. What this research shows so clearly is that the human factors, our confidence, our fears, what our peers think, are every bit as important as the technology itself. It proves that the biggest barriers to innovation often aren't technical at all. They're psychological. So the next time a great new tool is being ignored at work, maybe the first place to look isn't at the software, but at the unspoken fears and hidden doubts of the people you're asking to use it.